We have a great discussion planned for today. We'll be covering some fascinating topics from the history of chocolate to its effects on our brains. So why don't you give us a taste of what's coming up?
Yeah, because chocolate is something we all know. And that leads us to our first topic. When did chocolate become so well known?
We've covered the basics of what chocolate is. Now let's dive into the really fascinating part, how chocolate affects our brains. I know you're eager to explore this topic. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, the first thing is that feeling of pleasure we get when we eat chocolate. And, by the way, that's definitely related to brain chemistry, my favorite topic.
And that's how chocolate evolved from a bitter drink to the sweet treats we all love today.
I see. So sweet chocolate is a recent invention. Okay, sure.
Dark chocolate has more cocoa. This is important because cocoa contains many of the things that affect our brains.
That's really fascinating. And actually, I've heard about caffeine in chocolate. So caffeine affects our bodies and our brains.
And so, dark chocolate is healthier because it has more of the good stuff.
As you mentioned earlier, dark chocolate contains more of everything, both the good and the bad substances.
I wonder if chocolate can make us happy. It's definitely true that white chocolate has very little effect on our brains. Let's look at exactly what white chocolate does contain.
To answer your earlier question about happiness, chocolate only has a short-term effect on our mood. Happiness is much more complex than a piece of chocolate.
I think we need to take a closer look at some of the research on chocolate. Shall we explore that next?
Excuse me just a second. Before we do that, I'd just like to point out that most of the research is on short-term effects. We don't know much about the long-term effects of chocolate.
Chocolate and other candies are just unhealthy. I don't know why we are discussing chocolate when we should be talking about exercise and sleep.
I understand where you are coming from, and I hope we can talk more about health in future. Today, let's focus on chocolate and move on to our next point about healthy consumption.
We've covered a lot of ground today on chocolate and its effects on the brain. I think we're nearly ready to wrap this up. So,
Well, the key points are that chocolate contains a lot of useful things, that some of those things may help our brains, but we still need more research. And that we shouldn't eat too much chocolate. Right?
those are some great points to remember. So, everyone, what's your main takeaway from our discussion today?
For me, it's fascinating to see just how complex chocolate is. And you others, what do you think about chocolate now?
Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Anything you want to say to our listeners?
Chocolate is such an amazing food, but please remember, chocolate is just one part of a healthy lifestyle. Thank you all for joining in, and we hope you learned something new about chocolate and your brain today. Goodbye until next time.